Okay, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you
Great
for
to meet
taking a
you.
minute.
Yeah.
So, so let's begin this journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, the pandemic was raging. We were figuring it out. So many unknowns. Hopefully, we're better now out of it. How much of living through that has reverberated into the way you live your life today?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Personally or professionally?
Probably the Venn diagram is going to bleed together.
Okay. Well, personally, I spent the bulk of my time in clients' offices before the pandemic, and now I'd say 75% of my time is home
Hmm.
doing things virtually. Uh, but it's also helped uncover to me new ways of thinking about how we work, how we communicate, how we engage. And it's elevated the power of being in person,
Yeah.
but also given us some skill sets to be able to connect like this at scale. And so I'd say that's what's led into the way that I work now is that I've had to tweak some things. And I have to force myself sometimes to leave the house because I could be back to back all day.
Yep, absolutely. So let's find out what you do on a daily basis for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of fifth graders. It's career day.
Yes.
One kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yes. So the way I answer them is to say, communication, the way we talk, the way we listen, the way we think about things is a series of habits, right? Just like you learn how to tie your shoes, or you learn how to read, or you learn how to write. And so I work with people and companies on these types of habits that help them build better teams, win new businesses,
Yeah.
and basically develop leadership.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were young, what was your dream?
Oh, that's interesting. So I do remember in high school, can't remember. I probably wanted to be a princess when I was young, but I wanted to be a journalist. And then I wanted to own a bookstore. And then in undergraduate, I went in undeclared and learned about, I knew I wanted to work with people. I'm the fourth of 10 children. And
Okay.
so if you can imagine, I grew up in total chaos, had to learn to negotiate early,
Uh-huh.
figure out how to get attention, those sorts of things, but not acting or performing. And then I found that there was a way to do that by studying speech and hearing science.
Yeah.
And so that's where I pivoted. But I always wanted to, I think, do something in the field of communication and that engaged with people.
So who was your favorite journalist? Why did journalism rise to the top?
So that's a funny question because I don't know that I had a favorite journalist, and
Yeah.
now I don't know that there is a real journalist that exists.
Yeah.
I will say I love Yuval Noah Harari, who's
Yeah.
a historian and he's a philosopher and he's a writer and he
Yeah.
does do interviews and journal articles. This is me as an adult, but I think I like the idea of journalism because it involves research.
Hmm.
It involves then putting together ideas and storytelling, if you will, to get people to read and engage with an idea or a thought that you have. So I think fundamentally that was always interesting for me.
So what about books? What was your favorite book growing up?
Oh my gosh. So I loved A Prayer for Owen Meany,
Oh my
John
God.
Irving.
Oh my God.
And
I got it. Yeah.
yeah, okay, right? And here's the thing, if you think about that book, you can picture Owen Meany's voice and the capital letters
All
and what
caps.
all the things. So that is a was a favorite book of mine. And I'm trying to think like I love Charles Duhigg. He's an author. I
Yep.
don't know if you're familiar with him,
Uh-huh.
but so I like reading historical fiction. I like reading books that are interesting, science-based, helping you think about how we do things. And then A Prayer for Owen Meany. I just like smart, I guess, books that make you feel something, but I don't know, don't bring you down.
Yeah, John Irving was kind of the soundtrack to the 80s, like The World According to Garp,
Oh,
that whole
loved it.
narrative, right? So
Yeah.
I went to New York in the mid 90s, and my cousin Maria she was kind of a rebel. She was awesome. And she left too early, but when she was alive, she was the type that, she would go to the village and go to CBGB, or she would run into Joan Jett. She was a part of that punk thing. So when I was asking her about books, she was like, "You got to read Prayer for Owen Meany," which was kind of weird. It just didn't seem like her vibe. But
Yeah.
I had a friend when I was young who died at 17. He had all kinds of issues, and he used to go in and he used to put an IV in, which was it was normal for me. But Owen Meany always kind of reminded me of him, so there was a little bit of a backdrop to that. But yeah, I got to revisit that book because it was just so good. And I think the movie Jim Carrey was in it, right?
Oh, I never saw the movie. I'm not great about watching movies for books I read because,
Yeah.
but I've got a book for you that was written in 20 I probably like 2014. It's called The Elegance of the Hedgehog.
Okay.
And it's a quirky, interesting book that is this crosses three lives, but I think you'll appreciate it if you like to prepare for own meaning. It's different, but it's kind of you're in the people's heads, and one's a 13-year-old girl, one's an older woman. So anyway,
I just found it and I am putting it on hold. So yeah, it's coming my way. I listen to books, so
yeah.
I'm a big audio person, so it's on hold. I can't wait.
Well, I listened to it and they actually have a couple of voices. But because I just brought it to a book club because and they said this was our best book because it's intellectual, but it's quirky and funny, and you're just going through it with the characters, which I think is goes brings us back to Owen Meany, which
Yeah.
brings us back to life. Like if you could step into a character's experience, you feel something.
Last suggestion, Miranda July. Have you ever read her?
No.
Oh my God.
All right,
Oh
give it to
my.
me.
Her latest book is getting every possible award. It is
I
un
think I just saw it and I was like, it's what's it called? I think I might have it on my book list.
Oh, I can't remember. She is so funny. She is like one of the funniest human beings I've ever listened to. Like you can't even it's like when you talk about our brains not having the capacity, like it's kind of like reading Billy Collins. You just have to take a minute and step away because there's so much that goes into so little.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm writing that down because I need humor is helping me get through
Oh,
day to day these days.
I'm telling you, 2025 is quite a thing. So let's get into heroes. You're obviously highly driven. Who has been that heroic force, that inspirational force for you in life?
Um, well, I will have to say that my mom and dad, first of all, and for many reasons, 10 children. My dad and my mom, traveled all over the world, just always pushed us in education. So I think that there's that. I also think I'm a licensed healthcare provider. I worked with head and neck cancer patients for many, many years where get your voice box removed, your
Wow.
tongue removed, your jaw removed. And so what I'll say is I worked with a very specific head and neck surgeon and speech pathologist who really mentored and coached me and taught me how to engage with these patients in a way that I've taken to every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
And so Mark Singer and Carla Gress, two amazing mentors for me. And then the patients that I've had, I can't name them. I've learned so much from them
Yeah.
because could you imagine doing your job right now with no tongue or
Yeah.
with no voice box? You can't even imagine it. But so many of these patients were able to go back and be pilots and be the top sales rep of their company and speak at their daughter's wedding. That's takes a lot of
Yeah.
human spirit and courage. So that trifecta, I think, has just been ongoing heroes for me.
Val Kilmer, we just lost him. He was doing that
Yes.
for a while.
Yeah.
He, yeah.
Yeah, and he had, I believe, a tracheostomy. Just a really, but you saw like it changes
Yeah.
everything about you. And the fact that he could show up and talk about this and make his documentary and be on Top Gun, that takes so much power and
Yeah.
confidence and that human spirit that you just can't bottle.
And there is never going to be a movie like Top Secret again. Like
Yeah, Top Gun.
well, no, he Secret he did it. He did
Oh,
a
Top,
yeah, top
his,
that
yes.
funny movie that he did with the cow they tipped over and it exploded in the fight underwater in the saloon.
That. I'm like, wait, no, Top Gun. I'm like, wait, there was that. I
That
will
was
have to revisit that as
oh my
well.
God. Just like that's another one where you just can't, you got to catch your breath because there's so much happening. It was like Naked Gun and Airplane and all of
Oh
that
my God,
wrapped into
I'm
one.
writing that down too. I've got my weekend list.
Yeah.
Who's your hero? Who's
I
driven you?
I met my hero, Dwight Gooden, the pitcher for the New York Mets. He was just I collected baseball cards and was a big baseball fan, and I loved Doc, and I just had posters and autographs and all this stuff. Well, he came to town about 2 years ago to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. He was getting inducted into what they call the Hall of Game, and
Yeah.
I got a press pass, and I was like, he walks into the room. Bob Kendrick is the owner of the museum, and he comes around, and there's Doc, and I'm just looking at him, and he must have just felt it in the room. He came right up to me. I was just standing with everybody else, and I said, "Hey, I'm Joe Dimino," and he was like, "Dwight Gooden." I was just like, "Oh my God!" He was the nicest human. He's such a good soul, man. I mean,
Oh my gosh,
it
that's
emanates.
amazing.
Yeah.
See, you'll never forget that. It's
Oh
fun.
yeah.
Daniel Kahneman, he's a Nobel Prize winner and he wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. I wrote him an email a couple years ago and he wrote back to me and I was like,
I know. It's a huge
you'll
deal.
never forget that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember writing a request to Henry Rollins to be on my show because he put together a compilation of his favorite Verve jazz artists, and I know he
Ah,
wrote me back. I got a letter back, and it was like it was totally Henry, and I was like, that right there, all right, it was
it's
cool.
awesome. That's awesome.
It's great. So it's being in the world of communications, like I was getting into sports broadcasting, and the only degree that I could get at the University of Missouri Kansas City was communication studies. And it
Yes.
is fascinating, and I don't think people think about it as much. We as social creatures, no matter what language we speak, the only way that we're going to navigate this reality from A to Z is to have some vernacular and some understanding of how to, like, either be empathetic, to communicate, to tell people what we want, and to navigate. And it's such a cornerstone. So, what was the moment that you knew this was your profession to be in?
So that's a great question, and I will try to give you the short answer. But in undergraduate, I thought I was going to work with children who were I was really focused and I did my thesis, if you will, and all of my work on children that were on the spectrum. So I actually applied to graduate schools for that. And that's what I was going to school for. And I got into my first year of graduate school and I was in the photocopy machine, and this very well-known child language person that I went to study with, Wayne Secord, walked in. He said, I think you have vocal nodules, which makes my voice raspy. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And so I then embarked on this process where I got scoped in front of all these students. I have nodules. I went through voice therapy. But in part of the process, I met an amazing other mentor, Mike Trudeau, who introduced me to this whole world of voice, this other side of communication, because I'd studied language and how we think. But then I got into that and I just realized this is something that we do every day, but we don't learn about. And there's so many applications for it. So what I'll say is that's the moment where I thought, this is what I really want to do. And then I also had both undergrad and grad in psychology. So when you put together psychology and
Yeah,
communication, suddenly you can hang out with anyone, you could talk to anyone, and you can learn so much. I'm always learning.
yeah. My son's on the spectrum and didn't speak until he was about 3 or 4 years old. And I remember the speech therapist came in at one point, and I said, "Just tell me, is he going to speak? Is this going to happen?" And she assured me. Today, Miles, he's 20. He's like a CIA investigator. He will ask so many questions, and it's wonderful. And I always kind of have that in the back of my mind that
Yeah.
I didn't know if it
And
was going to happen.
And that's the thing as a parent, it's so scary, right? For so many reasons. And we recognize that communication is so important. What I'll say is the reason I love that we've evolved into neuroatypical is that in order in any kind of science background, you have to have what's typical, what you expect, so you can look for outliers. But when we start to recognize that people have different ways of communicating, and that brings different strengths, suddenly it can really open up opportunities. And I love that your son is like a CIA
I
agent.
love it.
Yeah.
So another thing that you need to put on your list for the weekend for entertainment, there is a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes, and it's a whole cadre of autistic children that are nonverbal that can read minds, and they've conclusively scientifically proven it. they're reading their parents' minds. So they can't give them
Okay,
birthday
this
gifts.
is crazy.
You have to I like it freaked me out when I listened to the first episode. I was like, oh my, like the kids are in another room, they have no idea what's going on, and they're like totally reading their parents' minds. Like the parents can't even tangentially at the end of the day say we're out of chips because they want to eat them when the kid goes to bed, because the kid's like, no, we have like a quarter bag on the shelf. They can't give them birthday gifts, they can't like do certain, yeah,
I can't wait. I'm gonna totally listen to that.
it's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. So what you do with your clients, just with all of your with all of your clients and what you were talking about being in the cancer world, it's a serious thing. How do you balance that out? How do you separate and balance?
So that's a great question. And I will say that about 9 years ago, I still consult with healthcare companies and facilities on speaking on changing process to improve outcomes for head and neck cancer patients. But I shifted for a number of reasons. About 9 years ago, I was traveling a lot. I have a lot of kids. It is a heavy burden to be in the world of cancer. And I work now cross industry. So I've taken all of my learnings and studies and things that I've had to develop over the years. And I work with many different, mainly professional services, but private equity. I work with University of Chicago. I work with advertising, and I bring that same idea of this communication science and the art of showing up into all the things they're doing, which has been really great because my kids have all graduated from middle school, high school, college in the last 10 years, and it allowed me more flexibility to
Yeah,
find the balance. I don't know if we ever have balance, but more harmony.
yeah, yeah, totally. So let me ask you this. If you walked into a room of everybody that knows you in that professional sense, clients, and you could walk up to a podium and tell them one fun story, one fun fact, one fun thing that would humanize you in a different way to that room, what would you tell them? First concert, something fun.
Okay, let me think about this. I mean, I have some really inappropriate stories. Can that be
We
part of
all
it?
do. Yes.
Um, I I got I I can't, I'm not going to tell this one. Okay. Hold on. Give me a second because I mean, like I would say, it's a joke that I'm a communication scientist from New Jersey. And you can imagine that I have 4 children that all are fluent in French and I can't speak a lick of it. So they are constantly navigating and coming up with things behind my back, which made it very difficult in the high school years.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So, speaking of kids, your career and everything that you've done, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I would say my family for
Yeah,
sure, because I've there's all different ways of having a family, but I'm very proud of the fact that my husband and I committed and put our kids into the French system.
yeah,
So they're completely fluent in 2 languages, all 4 of them. They've traveled all over the world because it's taught them empathy and just seeing things from different perspectives. And I think that's what I'm so proud of, is that they're constantly, like, I have a daughter living in Berlin, I have a daughter in New York. Everyone can adjust. I've got a daughter that's graduating this year, going off to Europe next year for college, and my son is a junior in high school, and they're everywhere they go, people are like, your kids are so curious and they ask so many questions and they're so thoughtful. And I think that comes from being an outsider in an educational system and in a
yeah,
family where we focus so much on communication.
yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think that I am like like an adjective, like confident, or I'd say I'm very magnetic. Because I really am interested in other people, in connecting with them. And my purpose is always to work with people to help them achieve what their highest version of whatever they're trying to do in the realm of what I can bring to the table. And so I think that draws people into me.
Yeah,
And that's how people have described me, is they're like, I can't explain it, but there's like an energy.
yeah, absolutely. So what's the biggest risk that you've taken? You know, the thing about life is we're always the only way we grow is the risk. And what's
Yeah.
the biggest one?
So the biggest risk I took was I was offered to run a program out in California at an academic medical center, and I declined because I had decided 2 years before that I was going to move to Italy, and I was 28, almost 29, and at the, amazing part of my career, and I said, got to think about it. And I said, I can't do it because I was planning to move to Italy. And so I gave my notice and I moved to Italy. And I lived there for a year and a half.
Wow.
And I was a bike tour guide. And
Cool.
I learned Italian in a very bad fourth grade, age 4 level. And I just connected and did all these things. And then I got married while I was there. I got engaged after we got there and then got married. And then but that hospital called me back and brought me back in. And I actually ended up with a bigger role.
That's awesome. What a great
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Um, so if anyone wants to reach out, they have any questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Oh my gosh. So studioreinvent.com, www.studioreinvent.com, or they can email me. I would say it's always hard to remember how to spell my name.
Right.
But hello@studioreinvent.com.
Okay. And I will put all of that in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story.
It's
Thank you
so
for
great to connect with you.
Yeah,
And I'm looking forward to it.
absolutely. Yeah. So, hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.